Hey guys, Derpy Hug Monster here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this. It's a buckling restraint for bondage play. I haven't got lining on it at the moment, but hopefully that should come later. At the moment I'm just going to be showing you how to make the main straps and obviously kind of do the coating on the edges just to make everything look really good. So before we get started, I'm first going to go over some materials and tools. So if we start with the materials, first thing I've got is a bunch of 1-inch D-rings. I've also got some single cat rivets because I'm putting a lining on the back. So as you can see on the back of these, they won't be rounded on the other side. So if you're planning on not lining and having the back finished, you might just want to get some rounded ones instead. I've got some grommets. I'm not entirely sure on the sizing on these. They're fairly small, they'll only do straight through one of my leather pieces. And I've also got some roller buckles. Now, the thing to note about these is you can get ones that are essentially 2 pieces, but they make up this. So you'll have a loop around here, and then you'll have a separate loop for that one, which makes it slightly easier because they tend to have a larger space in between here, which can be quite nice because when you come to put your leather through this part here, it can be quite a tight fit, so you get a little bit of wear on your leather. But I've done it once and there's no real markings or anything, so it goes through quite easily. It's just once you get the suppleness in your leather, it's a lot easier to work with. However, obviously if you're too worried about it, you might want to get these 2 separate pieces that make this. However, I think this is slightly cheaper, so that's the reason I went for it. You also want your cut leather. I've got, this is 2.5 inches by, I believe, something about 10 inches. And I've just used paper tabs to sort of mark on in pencil line a rough edge. And then I've cut it with just a craft tool. I have one lying around. This is just a standard craft tool. So there's nothing too bad about it. And yeah, once you've cut that, you've got that, you're pretty much ready to begin where we are now. I've also got this is just belt strap that's been cut and rounded. Honestly, I'd basically say you want to go for belt strap even with this, because you can get belt strap that's about 2.5 inches across. I just went for raw leather, and of course I've got this kind of rough backside here. Belt leather tends to be finished on both sides, so obviously this is meant to be the preferred side, but even though it's a little rough, it's easier to work with than this stuff, which is like working with kind of like wood chippings, etc. When you come to cut the edges around here, it's quite hard. Like this one, you can bevel both sides, but that obviously you can only really bevel the front because it's actually finished. That will make more sense later when we actually get into beveling. In terms of tools, I've got a 1-inch oblong punch, a rivet setter, and obviously the little cap thing that comes with it. I've got a grommet setter and a rotary cutter. These things are really cheap for some strange reason, but they're really good. They actually work really well. You'll find them ridiculously cheap and be like, does that actually work well? But they do a reasonable job. So I've also got a number 2 edge beveler, and I've got a edge creaser. These things come, they might look different, but that's okay. You get various types of edge creasers. They all pretty much perform the same job. This one's a little harder to work with because these 2 points are the same width apart, so it's harder to sort of get a good edge when you're going along. But with a little use of it, you get used to it. So I've also got a paintbrush. This is for applying gum tragacanth, and this is something you definitely need. A lot of people use these cotton, kind of like cotton buds but bigger, for applying the gum tragacanth, but really just a brush will do, as long as you're not, obviously it doesn't really make it suited for anything else once you've used it, but it's good to have a brush just for this instead of buying all these little cotton bud things, because it's a lot more expensive. And I've also got a bunch of clothes pegs. That'll become apparent later. And I also got some patterns, which are essentially I've marked out where I'm going to have my holes for my rivets. This is for the belt strap, and I've also got a separate section for when I'm going to do the grommets later. But obviously this is like two patterns on one piece, so I'm only going to be using this later. Some of these, like that's for the oblong punch, that bit across there. And also, one thing to note is where you're going to have your D-ring, you want to make it slightly wider than the space on your base strap, so it kind of goes like that. Because basically your base strap and belt strap patterns sort of have to line up. So, okay, the reason why my pattern wasn't lining up because I was lining it up with the wrong holes. These two are just for the belt, so that bends over like so, and that forms like the bit for your belt buckle. And like it starts there actually attaching to the base strap. As you can see, it lines up almost perfectly, except for this bit, which is the D-ring part, which you sort of have to bend in so you get a little bit of space for the D-ring to fit in, and obviously it just lines up at the end there. Sorry about that patterning explanation. I forgot to mention you also want a edge slicker. You can get a nylon one or wood ones. I just prefer the nylon one. I think the wood ones are slightly easier to attach to a power tool, but the nylon ones are easier to apply pressure by hand. By hand it takes a while, so if you can attach it to a power tool, I would. But the nylon one, you can really get your fun in there, so you can apply pressure along an edge. And this works obviously with the gum trigger count. So what I like to do to mark the holes is basically what I've got here is the blue sticking out bit is the main, or the center of the hole, should I say, and the red bits are 2mm away. So because the hole is 3mm big, it's slightly bigger than the hole, so I can kind of align my tool between these two red markers. But the actual cap size is about 7mm, which is about 3.5 millimeter radius. So in actual fact, it will cover any marks I've left by punching these holes, sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack this onto my base strap using these clothes pegs, because I don't really want to mark it in any way, so I don't want to pin it down or anything like that. And so after I've done that, I'll get back to you. So now that I've pegged my pattern over my base strap, what I'm going to want to do is I'm just going to take this. I just got a drawing pin, but anything that kind of pierces, you could probably even use like a compass or something. And I'm just going to push this into the hole, marks either side of my center hole mark, as well as the center hole mark itself. So I'll just do that. Pretty much, I just do it by hand. So I just look at I've actually got holes in here from the previous cuff, and if I can literally just push in here, give it a little bit of pressure, and then just pull up. And you're going to want to do these for all of the holes. Okay, so now that I've pierced the holes, you can actually do this at a later date. I just prefer to do it now to get it out of the way. Basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your edge beveler, wherever I've left it. I'm kind of in a tight area while I'm doing this thing. And basically you're going to run it along the edges to kind of give them a rounded edge, which is going to give you a much nicer appearance later on. So essentially you just have to take it along the edge like so. Depending on the finish on your lever, it might be harder to get a decent edge off. And basically you're just going to keep wanting to do this on all sides and try and even it up as much as you can. So I'm just going to keep going around this until it's all beveled. Okay, so now that your two pieces are nicely beveled, don't worry if it's a little bit rough, it generally gets cleaned up in the slicking phase. And obviously I've also marked the holes on here too. I don't know if you can see that. Just about. There you go. Thing is with the pattern for the belt strap is that where the edge is here, you don't want to go too close to the edge where it's rounded off, so you generally want to start a little bit closer like there. This bit gets tucked under, so you don't need to worry about how it looks too much. However, you you don't want your rivet to go too close to the edge, because if it's too close to the edge, obviously your lever will snap and your rivet will come out. So now about you want to do your edge creasing. The way I like to do edge creasing is I like to do a few strokes on a practice piece first. This is just like a piece that I was practicing how I was going to do each individual part of my cuff, and just take like a scrap piece of leather. If you're used to this, obviously it's not going to be a big deal, but if you're not used to it, you want to make sure that you're kind of doing it right, so you don't mess it up on the actual thing, and just make sure you've got the kind of stroke down, because you don't want to be screwing it up really. Okay, so now that we've got the hang of that, let's actually put it onto our proper leather. Let's clear away some of this excess, and we're just going to take it along one side, and you want to go down these strokes quite a few times just to set it in, because when you come to later you're going to be rubbing this leather quite a lot, so it can fade if you don't stroke it enough. I think this is actually the edges are a little bit untidy on this, so it's not quite as smooth, but I think it will work out eventually. Nope. If you do accidentally screw up like that, you can kind of rub it, and it will just reduce the appearance. Once you put polish on it, it's not going to be too big of a deal, as long as you haven't marked it too heavily. You might have a little issue where the edges are too rough, but generally if you stroke enough times and you're consistent, you should get a nice edge. Yep. And you want to do this all around the edge. So now I finished creasing. As you can see, I've done the belt strap. I like to do both sides of the belt strap. It's just something I like doing. You only really need to do the finished side, but it's just kind of nice when you lift it up slightly and you can see more of like a professional finish. And obviously I've got the base strap here. Just looks a little better now. Generally, as you go along, like the creases get more defined, so as long as you'll kind of keep doing it right, you should get quite a nice edge. There's a little bit of bumpiness there, but it's pretty good. So the next stage is to apply the gum trigger. So I'm going to get that stuff ready and come back. So one thing that you might want to do is actually move this forward a bit. You might want to take like a scissors or a craft knife and go along the edges to kind of take any bits that are too rough off. I think mine's mostly okay, so I'm just going to roll with it for now. The gum trigger is basically kind of like a glue / resin, so it pretty much packs everything down and takes away these rough filings, so to speak, from the edges. So basically you take your bottle, if we can fit that in, and you've got to push down on the top just to get it off. You take your brush and you dip it in a little bit, and basically something I've started doing recently is normally I just put it along the edge, but what you can do is you can sort of put it along the edge but also dip it over. If you've got a rough behind, so to speak, you can just dip it over slightly onto the behind too, so that when you come to slick, it will push down around the edge too on the back side. Normally you wouldn't want to do this if you weren't going to cover your backside, but since I'm planning to, I think that's what I'm going to go for. You generally want a semi-decent amount, not too much, because otherwise your slicker will just push it around the edge, but not too little too, because you want it to have enough glue to sort of set. I tend to do a couple of coats of the gum trigger calf around all of the sides, just to give it a more even appearance and to kind of compress things a lot more. It's quite hard to do manually. I think if you had a power tool it would be a lot easier, but yeah, this stage will take some time. I'll just do quickly one part of this edge. If I take my slicker, I've got to avoid, I've actually got a chip in this one, so I've got to avoid where it is. And you just take the edge and you just rub along, and you want to build up a bit of friction, because that's what's going to give you your heat, which is going to kind of make everything stick together. Okay. Okay. As you can see, I've only been doing it a little while, but the edges started to stick together. It's just bent over there where it's been slicked. And generally, you want to do this quite a bit just to get a good edge. It kind of burnishes a little bit. It does fade a little bit as the glue dries, but it will give you a slightly darker edge. But that's okay because you can't really see it that much. If you get a little bit on your leather like I have there, don't worry about it too much. Once you get the polish in on the last stage, you'll barely see it. So, okay. Okay, so now that the slicking is done, I've applied about 2 coats. It's just about drying off on the second coat, so it might be a little darker than it will end up as. The main thing you want to make sure of is that your belt strap is really well slicked, because it's going to be quite hard to add another coat once you've put it together, whereas the base strap, you've got this kind of edge here that's quite easily accessible until you line it, of course, in which case you're pretty much screwed. So the next thing we want to do is add some holes. I'm going to need 3mm holes for the main rivets, so I'm going to set this up. Unfortunately it only goes forward, so I have to rotate it all the way around to get back to 3. It's 1, 2, 3. Yep. And so basically we just take this and we basically line it up around our marker holes, try and get it in the center. I'll try and show you here. The problem is I need to see it to actually get a good grip here. And you basically want to try and line it up between your 2 marker holes. If you're really feeling edgy about it, just imprint a little bit and then you pull back, see the imprint. So for example, if I've just imprinted it slightly, where is it? That hole there. You can just about see the imprint there. And then you can adjust based on that imprint, just so you line it up where you want it to be. Don't panic too much about lining it up. Just make sure it's around about where you want it to be. You can take your time on this just to make sure you've done everything right. And yeah, and then just press down. Fortunately you can't see this because I'm trying to do it over here. Okay, and you just press down really hard. There we go. And once you're done, you can release that. A lot of times with these rotary cutters, they'll leave a little bit left in. You should just be able to clean that up from the other side, just poking something through and using a cutter. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these holes as well as the strap holes. Okay, so now that we've punched all our holes except for the kind of oblong punch markings here, as well as the grommet holes, obviously we're going to do that later. We're going to want to put some polish on these. I like doing it now, well, you can't really do it after you put the rivets in. Well, you can do it, but obviously it's going to be hard to get them around there without hitting the metal. So I like to do it now. You can do it obviously after you punch the oblong hole, but my kind of hammer tools are in a different place, so I tend to do it at this stage and then leave it later. Okay, so I'm going to use a mid-tan marron clair braid gloss. It doesn't really matter as long as it's vaguely the colour of what you're going to be applying it to. So for black leather, obviously you want like a black polish, etc, etc. I still use a brown on here because I find it evens the colour up between the two a bit. So we're just going to take a spare piece of cloth. This is actually just a cut from a t-shirt, a really old tatty one, and just going to get some polish on there. and basically just rub it on. And this also kind of enhances the creases, so you get quite a nice look to that. And it will also help with any scratches you've got currently on your leather from the working before. It gets rid of them too, so as you can see, that crease that was there it's still there, but you can't see it as apparently. So it's quite nice. You want to apply not too much on this, but a good bit. Just keep kind of layering it up. If you put too much on, you don't really worry too much. It'll come off later anyway when you start to buff it. If you apply shoe polish, it's pretty much just like that. I can do it both sides. I don't really see a need to. I think I did before, so just helps protect the leather a little bit, so it's possibly worth doing. Not really an expert on that, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just apply a little bit of polish, and it should be good to go. So that's about done. As you can see, it looks a lot cleaner now. We're going to keep on polishing that in a second. Let's just apply kind of a base coat to this leather. My particular leather comes kind of like textured as you rub the polish in, which I quite like. It takes a while to work it in, but once you've worked it in, I find it looks a lot nicer. But you have to sort of apply it evenly in order to get this nice textured appearance. Otherwise you end up sort of burnishing one part and the rest of it looks like a mess. Okay, I'm going to continue with this, and I'll see you after I get on to the next stage. Okay, so now that's evenly polished, I'm going to apply just a damp cloth. So some water will come off. I'm just going to smooth the water over it quick. Kind of distribute it evenly, and I'm going to do the same for my belt strap. You don't want too much water. I think I've got a little too much there, but your leather should soak up quite a bit. And then basically after you've done that, you're going to want to kind of buff it. You can buff it with cloth. I'm just going to use a paper towel just because it's disposable. You can rub it in just like so. And I tend to not to like it too shiny, so obviously you can apply multiple coats and work up a nice shine, but I think that's a nice point to be at. Okay, so now I'm ready to set my oblong punch and punch that in. I've got a hammer, as you can see. I want quite a big one. I've got my punch, and you can use a mini anvil for this, but I'm using just a vise with a attached kind of metal part. So I'm just going to set my punch between the two, just between the two markings. Make sure it's roughly even. Looks good. And then just tap it in. Okay, so once you've got your oblong hole punched, you can clean it up a little bit with a knife. Actually, just clean out these few fibers. It might be worth applying gum tragacanth and running something along the sides, but this is like a personal piece for me, so I'm not really that fussed about it. And you're going to want to take your belt buckle and basically this is going to go along like so. Wait, am I doing this? Okay. What am I doing? Ah, that's better. Goes along like so. And then you flick the middle part through there. And then you have to bend it through the extra part. Okay. Obviously if you're using a two-piece it will be a little bit different. But it's pretty easy to work out, so we're not going to worry about it too much. And you're going to have to bend this, basically just pinch it down. And then you kind of want to line up these two holes that we made earlier, so they're about on top of each other. And once you've done that, you want to take your rivets, poke them through for the back, and you're going to take the head or cap and just insert that from the top. Apologise if you can't see this. I'm trying to do it. I can't really look at the camera. Like so. It just clips on. So just do the same there. Take the head, push it in, and it'll just click on. It won't be set. You can still put it off with a bit of effort, but it'll keep it in place. And I like to hammer these separately before we attach it to the main strap. So get your rivet setter. I like to keep these two together, otherwise you could lose them. So bags are great. Take that, put it under your strap, so it's below the one you're about to set. Have to put it near the edge because the buckle needs to hang off a bit. Okay, and you're going to put your setter over it. I like to do 3 taps. It should be set. As you can see, it's now pushed down a bit. And the same with the other one. So essentially what we now do is just go through our belt, and what you're going to want to do is line them up a bit and start pushing your rivets through. So the only one that's going to be different is your D-ring one. Because you're going to want to put the D-ring on, obviously. And so they should line up like that. A, because you want to put the D-ring on, and B, because you're going to have to bend it a little bit, because it has to have that extra space for the D-ring to be able to rotate and actually be in position. So as you can see, I'm just about to come up to the D-ring part now. If I just push that through. If your holes aren't that lined up, it's okay. You get a little bit of leeway, so yep. As long as you're kind of true-ish to your markings, you should be fine. So obviously the D-ring holes are going to be a little bit forward, so you're going to want to push this up a little bit and kind of just bend it a little bit so you can sort of push it into place. If I just put a rivet through now, I can now sort of semi-force it into place. Probably needs a little more bend. What I do want to put is a D-ring on first though, before I forget. Like a numpty, and that's actually going to help you get it into place a lot more, because it's actually going to force that bend there, which you need. There we go. Put the cap on. Like so. Same for the other hole. Should be a little bit easier now. Here we go. So you sort of force that into place. Now just the last one, which should be regular because you've essentially pushed it up for the D-ring already. So that's 9 rivets in total. Now you should be able to... I typically like to force the one in the back, but actually, I think I'll probably go from the front this time. Just set them from there. Okay, looks good. You can just about feel it, so if you want to get a good feel for how far this is set in. You don't want to push them too fast, otherwise they'll kind of groove into your leather. Let's do the back ones first. Doesn't really make much of a difference. It's just if you're having trouble with your fitting them into the holes then. Okay. It's all good. Push that the other way. Okay, now the last one. And you should have a nice little strap. Obviously without the grommets yet, but it's still mostly functional. So now I'm just pegging my, or shall I say stabbing my grommet markings. I've just measured about 1 3/8 in, and I'm just going to set it down and start putting down the marking holes. And now I just need to punch them using the 4mm holes. You want to make sure it's not 3mm ones that you use for the rivets, because grommets are slightly bigger. Okay, so now that you've got your holes, you can just set your grommets in them. I've got these are obviously grommets that don't have caps. I've got a grommet setter for them, which I got with these tools. I find these slightly too small, but they just about fit, so I'll show you in a second once I can manipulate this tool well. So I want to press into these. And for example, this one, it sort of flattens out here. You don't want to leave too much space with these ones, because if they have too much excess space, they tend to split. I think this is actually quite a good fit for it. You can just do this with all the holes. Obviously, if you've got like a proper grommet setter and capped grommets, you'll be doing this a little bit different, but the kind of principle is the same. So now we have 2 completed cuffs. I've actually worn that, like, this leather isn't too supple, so you have to sort of wear it in. But I've looked it up to my wrist before, and it's quite a nice fit. Obviously, I'll probably get back to this when I've worked out what sort of lining I want on the inside, and I'll do another video on that, and that'll sort of finish it off. So I hope this helped you a lot if you're thinking about starting leathercraft and you want to make some good gear. I think it looks really good. I'm quite happy with how it turned out for both of these. I think actually, yeah, the colour's a bit duller for the first one. I might have to go back and add some more polish. But I hope you guys enjoyed and have fun crafting.